everyone, and welcome back to another brand new video. Now, in the last few days we've had news that Hungary will be on the 2025 MotoGP calendar. Now, quickly just going to talk about this and I'll talk about the overall calendar, but first time we are supposedly going back to Hungary since 1992. We've hosted two Hungarian GPs in the lifetime of MotoGP in 1990. It was supposed to be on the calendar for 91 but dropped off due to the track being upgraded. This was the Hungary, which is currently used by Formula 1, and it was back on 1992. In 1990, Mick Doohan won aboard his Honda, and in 1992, Eddie Steady Lawson won on his Cagiva, which was actually Cagiva's first ever win in 500 Grand Prix racing. Fun fact of the day for you. Now, fast forward all these years, we actually get to 2009 Hungary. Now, we were supposed to have a Balaton Ring, the circuit of the 2009 season, that was supposedly on the calendar, which never came about. The track was never built. Again, one of those ones where it's kind of agreement in place, track to be built, we'll race there, but a lot of things can happen from a handshake to the point we get to a Grand Prix. And I'm hoping, I'm going to give you a small bit of backing story here of the actual current circuit that we're going to in 2025. Balaton Park, which is the track that we're going to next year. Now, you'll see in the background here, I have some footage of GP bikes, me in VR going around on a GP bike. Now, I'll talk about the track later in the video itself, because there's a lot of corners that are not great. We'll get to it later. Personally, I'm not too sure how good of a Grand Prix level track it is, but it was built in 2019, I think was the opening. 2019 it started being built and it finished in May of 2023. It was actually supposed to be on the calendar this year, and again it kind of got pushed back due to not being finished. It's pretty basic looking track, but we'll leave that up to you. You can kind of see from in the video what it kind of contains and stuff like that. But it's, for me, it's another part of the whole calendar charade. I have a little bit of text here in front of me. In the last 15 years, so go back as far as 2009. So I've already mentioned 2009 Hungary was provisionally on the MotoGP calendar. Of course, we did not go. 2012 we were supposed to go to Ukraine. Of course, that did not happen. Who can forget the Circuit of Wales in 2016? 2017 we had Indonesia's first kind of rumblings that would be on the GP calendar. We didn't end up getting that for another 5 years in 2022 when we went to Lombok. Finland, the Kimi Ring, a track that is probably one of the more notorious ones over the last 5 years of GPs. We're meant to go there every year. It was going to happen. The next year it was going to happen, and then it was too close to Russia. And I'm simply a MotoGP bike racing channel. I have nothing to do with politics, so we're not going to go any further into that one. 2019 we're also meant to go to Northern Ireland, and as a Southern Ireland Republic of Irish person, that would have been amazing. Fortunately, that never came true. 2021 we're supposed to go to Russia. For obvious reasons that didn't happen. 2022 Brazil was supposed to be on the calendar, obviously wasn't. Hungary, India and Kazakhstan all have not been fulfilled for 2024, so it leaves you a lot of questions of, will 2025, will we get to? First off, we're meant to go back to India after a pretty successful debut in 2023. We're hoping we get to go back to Hungary for the first time in 33 years, which would be pretty crazy to come back to a country that hasn't been on the calendar in so long. And Kazakhstan is turning into another Kimi Ring where we're told stuff, but if you do a bit of digging and do a bit of reading between the lines, it isn't as all as it seems on some of the official social media accounts of the GP and stuff like that. It's not everything is reported as what you get from standalone reporters, like for example Simon Patterson. Now, for me, that's 11-12 races that should be on the calendar in the last 15 years. That's almost a hit rate of one a year. It's one every year and a half roughly. That's an incredible amount of races that have been, in theory, on the circuit for next year. Now, I know it's exactly the same in Formula 1, but I'm going to keep the two sports separate. But for me, it's really not acceptable. So first off, it's quite bad for local tourism to have a potential race here for never to go ahead. For example, the countries like Brazil, Finland, Wales, Ukraine, these, of course, unfortunately, currently in Ukraine, we're not going to have anything. But if we go back as far as 2012, we were supposed to. It's always a bad look when tracks fall off a calendar and are pushed back a year, or they're re-signed for the following year, and there's a big song and dance when we haven't been there. So it was a real surprise in the first place to even get to India, because I remember India had been, from when Formula 1 finished with them, it had been kind of rumoured we'd go there eventually. and I had been we were dancing around India and kind of thinking, oh, we'll eventually get there. So when it was announced we'd go, it was still like, I'll believe it when FP1 happens, for example, and the fact we got it was brilliant. And I'm hoping, again, I really am hopeful for the country of Hungary, for the track itself. I always want to see more diversity in nations in the World Championship. Maybe then the next up and coming Hungarian rider can come through and maybe make his way into Grand Prix, and it would just be great. Again, it's the World Championship. We want to see as many different nationalities, flags on the podium, and we want to go to as many different tracks, as many different climates, and just, again, it's a slightly different track. We have the track map on screen there now. You can kind of see it's built in a pretty tight square footage, really. It's not the biggest track in the world now. According to Wikipedia, the capacity is only 10,000. I'd imagine that's probably 10,000 in just grandstands, maybe. I'm not too sure. I'd imagine a lot of it is grassy banks and stuff like that. But the 2.5 mile circuit, it's predominantly left-handers. Marc Marquez probably had a little something to do with the design of this place, but a lot of the track kind of falls back and kind of collapses upon itself in terms of just the real estate of the land. And unfortunately, I just feel with current MotoGP bikes, now also 2025 and 2024 World Super Bikes were supposed to go there and are supposed to go there next year. Whether that'll happen, I hope so, because again, World Championship, I'd like to see more countries, and I think sometimes super bikes can go to slight different tracks to GPs, whereas I feel like the GP has to have a certain kind of racetrack that has to have everything in it for the Grand Prix, whereas I think World Super Bikes can go to slightly more maybe old school venues and just something a bit different. I think they can slightly kind of slide under the radar in that sense. But back to the Balaton Park circuit itself, if you look at the track map, a lot of the track doesn't have much real estate to move back and forth if we need to extend barriers. And again, you will see in today's video now, this track that I'm playing on here is ripped from, I believe, R-Factor or one of the 4-wheel games, and has been put into the game, and it's quite flat. The walls are very close in a lot of corners. Now, there's a lot of corners I don't particularly like the look of in terms of run-off. So straight away, for me, there's kind of an issue with nearly half the track. I'd probably argue that turn 1, 2, maybe 3, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14 need a bit of work in terms of kind of they're pretty close to the barriers, and in terms of maybe it's not the fastest track we'll go to, but you'll still see a GP bike hit 180, 190 miles an hour. And as we've seen with Toprak's crash recently in World Superbikes, it doesn't take a lot to happen for a rider to go off the track at quite a lot of speeds. If you watch, obviously, the footage here from the onboard of the GP bikes, but if you also, they have posted on the official GP socials a kind of drone kind of moving around the track. And if you think that the width of the track, that again, and then there's a barrier, so you don't have a lot of room. Especially, I'm quite scared of the whole turn 11, 12, 13 complex. Turn 11, it's pretty narrow, it's pretty fast in a GP bike, and you're braking at extreme lane. Especially on a GP bike, you'll be braking at quite a bit of lane coming into 12, which is a really slow first gear, tight hairpin. So you have seen in the past, very similar to what Toprak Razgatlioglu had the issue with in Magny Core, where braking with a bit of lean, small temperature difference in the front tire, and bang, he was down. And then if that happens here, you're going straight for a wall, or worse, you're going straight across a pretty slow chicane, which would be pretty disastrous, really. It's a track that I look at and think that we might have issues, and it's a track that I'm wondering, will we ever even see GP? And it's kind of, I'm excited for it, because I always like to see when there's new tracks. I'm always excited to go to new countries. It gives, for me in Europe, as a European, it's more options to go to real life tracks. It's another nationality to get onto the calendar. It's great for the overall, I suppose, circus of MotoGP that we're going to. Again, not new country, but new to modern day. Obviously 1992 was the last time we were there, so 6 years before I was even born was the last Hungarian GP. So to kind of finish up on it, really, it's just, will we get this track? Will we go ahead here? Now, the track is built. It has been open since last year. There has been racing there. At the moment, the kind of biggest racing at the moment, Ferrari Challenge Europe, TCR Eastern Europe, and F4 CEZ are the kind of major kind of, what would you call them, kind of establishments have gone there. Current race lap record, it's all cars. We haven't seen any top level bikes go there, so we don't really know much about the track and how much it'll race and what it's like. Again, we don't know how much use it's going to get. A lot of times tracks that are built and they don't get used, they end up getting dirty. Remember basically Indonesia, which we're going to currently in a few weeks time for Grand Prix. Also, if you go back to the Termas that we may or may not get back on the calendar, depending on a lot of political things that I do not want to go into, because I do not have any interest in talking about politics. But that track was used maybe once, twice a year, and it was by the time you get to the end of the weekend, the track was only then barely usable, and at that point the weekend was done, and it was another 12 months before we went back there. So there's a lot of questions when we go to a new country, how will it be adopted. And I feel like if this track has been built purposely for bike racing, which it kind of is stating a lot of it in the description on Wikipedia, and some of the research I've done for this video is that it's meant to be a big race park, kind of racetrack, a motorsports event arena, but also quite popular for bikes is what the kind of hint away as is. And it's meant to be another kind of big motorsport arena other than the Hungary Ring, which is the one that we probably most know in Hungary. It is about 50 miles south at the moment of that, so they're not too far away from each other in terms of in the country, but it's just good to get another track in the country anyway. But when I finish up, I just kind of want everyone's feedback in the comments. Do you think we'll get to go? Do you think it's a good track? Do you consider it maybe a little bit old school in its design? Do you consider it up to modern day MotoGP standards with the current bikes? Unfortunately, it was looking like we were going to get a new front tyre for next year, which means the racing will be better. Unfortunately, that has not been the case, as some very silly decisions have led to us not having enough testing time for that, and we've not gotten the tyre. But to kind of just finish up on the person side of the humanity side of the calendar, every racetrack that gets built and is going to be on the calendar, every mechanic, every team has to get flights out there, and we've heard a lot of the last couple of years, especially with the kind of COVID years up until now, when a racetrack gets put on the calendar, people provisionally buy their flights and stuff. So people are putting money on the line here, traveling out there, and journalists, mechanics, all the staff in the team. So when we get these, we'll say Kazakhstan's or the Kimi Ring, where we're supposed to go there and people have to kind of commit to going, even though we don't know. Again, Indy this year, that has been cancelled. We need less of this in the next 5, 6, 7 years of the Grand Prix. We just need consistent tracks on the track that we get to go to. Even if maybe it means sacrificing a few nations, it will be terrible. But I think it's a lot worse when you have the bread and butter of the MotoGP community, the journalists, mechanics, the catering staff, basically flying out to these places, and unfortunately very close to the event it gets cancelled. They can't claim back their money, and like we all know that in terms of the very top riders in GP make good money, the rest of the GP kind of family are not making savage money. A mechanic in a middle table Moto2 team isn't making extreme money. So I think we need to look at the whole bigger picture here and think, is it always a good idea to maybe jump the horse and get one of these tracks and one of these countries on the calendar when we can't guarantee 100% full fold that we'll get to go. But like any there, I hope you have enjoyed. This is just a kind of quick look at the circuit and just a quick discussion on the problems and the trials and tribulations of the current MotoGP calendar. Let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching. I will see you in a future video. Slán go fóill.